I look at the story this morning, Simon. It made me think, Tottenham, okay, they've decided to appeal against Rodrigo Bentancur's 7-match ban for the racial slur he made about his teammate Son Heung-min. Tottenham have accepted the decision that Bentancur was guilty of the charge made against him by the FA, but they've appealed against the ban's length. Now remember, the minimum suspension for this aggravated breach of FA rules is 6 matches. He made the comments while he was appearing on TV back home in Uruguay. So we know all that. The Tottenham statement tells us, while we accept the guilty finding against Rodrigo by the Independent Regulatory Commission, we believe the subsequent sanction is severe. Rodrigo will remain suspended from domestic competition while the appeal is heard, and the club will make no further comment during this time. That's a bit strange in itself, Simon. He can't play domestically, but he's still available for Tottenham's Europa League matches. All very bizarre. But Simon, just because you have the right to appeal, should you appeal?
Well, yes and no. First of all, there's a player involved in this and his wishes. So if the player comes to me as the owner of the football club and says, I feel quite strongly about the fact that this was not meant to be this way. I understand that I'm at the bottom end of the tariff in terms of the sentencing guidelines, for want of a better expressions. But I've made my apologies. I didn't mean it that way, and I really would like you to appeal on my behalf. So if you're a club and you're confronted with a player saying that to you, then you have the choice to say, well, no, you put us in this situation, get on with it. Or if you're looking at it going, well, in this day and age, we make a big song and dance about what traditional broadcasting actually is. And you see people like Joe Rogan, they're getting hundreds of millions of views, and NBC getting 1 million views. So why is it so prevalent that what he said is on a TV station that gets him that extra game ban? Wherever if you're going to ban somebody for saying something in the public domain, does it really matter if it's on TV or if it's on Twitter or if it's on a social media channel? He seems to have gotten an extra game on top of the minimum tariff. The minimum tariff was applied because the prerequisite amount of regret was deployed. The intent was probably analysed as not being malicious rather than simply ignorance. And the fact that the player he has insulted took no offence at it. So that's why the minimum tariff. And then the tariff of 1 extra game on top of it was put on because it was on TV. So why should it be categorised that way? Why should they get
But why shouldn't it?
But why should it be?
I mean, so it makes bigger impact when it's on TV and it's actually said than it does in print.
What does it? Does it make a bigger impact if you do it on Twitter or on social media? It's on a traditional linear broadcaster, and it seems to be that they've given this extra game penalty because of that. Wherever you've said it, it doesn't matter what the medium is. Wherever it's said and wherever it's carried, then ultimately it becomes a public domain issue. So I can see why they might argue the principle. I don't think they're arguing against the fact that there should be less sanction for the racism part of it, which I don't think is steeped in bad intentions. I think it's steeped in indigenous thinking in terms of the way he perhaps has communicated in his own country and a degree of ignorance. Both of which he's agreed that are inappropriate. He's taken a £100,000 fine. He's going to go on an education course, which I don't think he needs an education course. He's now aware of the fact that he's said something that's bloody silly.
But surely he does so, because they keep on putting their foot in it. Cavani did it when he was here. Now Bentancur's done it. We hear it all the time. But they don't get it.
But I think once
Enzo Fernandez at Chelsea.
Well, how many times, how many lessons do you learn? How many cautionary tales do people have when they say, well, that person did it, you should have followed his example, and look what happened to him? People still make their own individual mistakes.
I get that.
So the consequences they have to be meted out individually. The language that Cavani used was again very colloquial in terms of the manner in which he communicated in his own country, unacceptable in ours. And by the same token, if you commit a crime in this country, which if you were Portuguese and you wouldn't be guilty in Portugal or France or Germany, is irrelevant if you are operating in this country. So I get the principles, but I don't think the characterisation of Spurs trying to argue against the sanction of racism is the principle here. It's about the tariff. Because if
it not also, Simon, about the look? Well, is it not about the look? Essentially, Tottenham are appealing against racism.
Well, I don't think they are. I think that there is an acceptance that the players' behaviour is unacceptable. The tariff is what they're arguing about. If they're not arguing to overturn the principle of having no sanction whatsoever, they're arguing about potentially every game that they get back, and even if it's just one, is a game back that they have him available in their squad.
Yeah, but it could also be argued he's lucky he didn't get a heftier ban.
Let's have it right. He made a very clumsy, silly statement where he took a look of an individual and homogenised it to a nation. And it's unpalatable what he said. But his immediate retraction, his immediate acknowledgement of it are the principles that one has to deploy here.
I mean, I don't want the guy to be hung, drawn, and quartered. And to be fair to
I think 6 matches is perfectly adequate. I think even that's a bit strong.
He did have Son's backing at the time. Of that, there is no doubt. This was him.
I love him. I love him. We had a lot of good memories. We started play together when he joined, and he apologized straight afterwards. You know, when we had a holiday, I was at home, and I didn't even realize that was what's going on. And he just sent me a long text that you could feel that it was coming from his heart, you know, and felt really sorry. And he almost like cried when he said apologize in a public, also personal as well. So, but I love him, and he made a mistake, but I have no problem at all.
He's got no problem at all. Strangely, though, back in September, Ange Postecoglou said this about it.
It's not just about punishment, it's the opportunity for people to atone, to learn. Because if we're talking about having a society that's kind of understanding and tolerant of everything, we also must show that to people who make mistakes, as Rodri has made this in his time. But we kind of know him very well, a lot better than most, because we spend every day with him and we understand the kind of person he is. And we understand that, even though he's a great guy and a fantastic teammate, he's made a big error this time, and he's got to take the punishment. But also we need to make sure that we give him the opportunity to atone for it and learn from it, and hopefully others learn from it as well.
You see, I think Ange has nailed it there.
And that's fair. But
just take your medicine, we got on with life. So why have Tottenham dragged it out?
Because Tottenham are suggesting that the minimum end of the scale is what's appropriate, not the minimum end of the scale plus 10%. So Tottenham's argument, if I'm making a case for Tottenham in this situation, without knowing how much the player's been influential in the decision-making process, Tottenham are saying the tariffs are the tariffs. And you can argue about the tariffs. If you're at one end of the argument where any misstep, however lack of intent was behind it, that people should get put in the stocks and thrown tomatoes out and should be banned for a year.
Not that.
No, but there will be people that say, it should be more than 6 games. It should be a season, because this transgression is appalling. If you're at that end of the spectrum, it'll be not good enough.
No, football just had to be seen to do something, and it did.
And I think 6 games.
If you were at the top of the house at Tottenham, would you have appealed it?
Would you have appealed it? Depends upon the circumstances.
No. Would you have?
No.
Would you let it go at 7?
No. Depends upon the circumstances of the player's personality, the knowledge of the player.
We know everything about this.
No, we don't.
Yes, we do.
We don't know the player's personality.
You heard from Son.
We don't know the player's personality. We know what the optics of what the media representation of what Son felt. If I'm sat in a room with Son in isolation of an off-record conversation where he says, I'm going to say the right things in the media because I do not want to disharmony in the dressing room. I'm also the club captain. But I am aggrieved about this, and I have told him I'm aggrieved about it. If I have that conversation, I'm going to have a slightly more informed view. If I've got a conversation with Son going, I couldn't care less. I didn't take it in the slightest that way. Right, and I'm as right as rain with my colleague.
But Bentancur's shown remorse.
And then Bentancur...
So you would probably appeal it like Tottenham have done.
Well, I would, as I just said, I would take all the information in the rounds. You've got
all the information.
And I would say, well, after having that conversation with the players and being privy to the entire gambit of what everyone feels, I would then look at it and go, right, I think this is at the bottom end of the scale. I think that my player has shown the appropriate amount of contrition and is prepared to accept all the consequences of his behaviour. His colleague has been this, but I don't think it needs a penalty on top of the penalty. The minimum charge of 6 games, which, by the way, I do think is hefty. I don't know how these tariffs come from, but ultimately, let's just say it's been accepted by all the clubs that you get 6 games for this kind of behaviour. Why is my boy getting another game? Why? Because you say it's on TV. Well, the mediums that we carry in this world are so diverse now and so far-reaching. What bleeding difference does it make if it was a media? So if he did it on Twitter, would it have been less? If he did it if he did it in a print, would it have been less? And why? And why would that be the case?
Let's put it out there. I mean, ironically, strangely, he's still available for Tottenham's Europa League matches. It's domestic games that this comes into play. But the fact that Tottenham have appealed, so 7 they say is too tough, and they're trying to get it down to 6. Are Tottenham right to appeal? And in appealing, how does that look? Because they're essentially, remember, and this isn't overplaying it or overstating it, they're essentially appealing against racism. Give us a call, 03717 223344 81089.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.